So the main client with editorial work is your magazine editor. And Michael and I were talking about this at lunch. Like, magazine editors people don't go after them enough. I mean, some people, all the magazine editors I work for, I went to them directly. I didn't go through my agent. Like, I went and created relationships with them. I called them like, oh, can I come in and show you my book and get your opinion? I sat down with the photo director of Vogue, and I was like, I'd been working with them for a little bit here in New York, and I was like, tell me, I want to hear it. I gave him my book. I was like, tell me everything. What do you think? Like, I just want to like lay it on me. And he started critiquing my work, and I didn't want anything other than just the critique, because I knew that way I would learn more about what Vogue was looking for, and what, of course, what he thought and what I could work on. And just like, it was the harshest critique, but it was amazing. I learned so much about refinement and what makes people like Camilla Nickerson and Grace Cunnington so amazing. We had a long conversation about that. And my relationship with Vogue, got even stronger after that, because he got that I was, that I'm after this certain kind of career. And he knew that I also at that point knew more about like what he was looking for, so I could better take care of him. And Vogue is definitely inside my voice. I think it's more commercial, but it's the American reality, right? Like making it pretty and polished and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was kind of being able to just calling the editors and figuring out who books the stylist, and then sitting with them and having them critique your work. Even if it's just a test. Some of them, especially at like Nylon and places like that, they're totally open with meeting new people. So that's always a good way to kind of start creating those relationships. The magazine editor relationship has brought me in so much revenue as well with commercial and ad jobs. It's just incredible client to take care of. So the reason a lot of magazine editors are stylists as well, and it's like they hire us because they can't do everything by themselves. So it becomes about taking care of their voice, while also the magazine's voice and your own voice all at the same time. And when I kind of started to, because I was like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. And I started to look at, okay, well, from their voice, I know what they're gonna like. Like, I know how I can style and do inspiration stuff into their particular taste. Like, when I was working for the Italian magazine, I wanted to do something very like bombshell, like old cinematic. Like, I started to look at Italian references, because it's like super pride kind of thing. And I got obsessed with Monica Vitti, who was like in some Fellini films. She's like an old movie star. And I went and did all this research, and it was very much still me. It was like a powerful woman. She was super sexy. Sense of humor was there, but it was very ironic. We did the sense of humor a lot with like lighting and hair and makeup. I made her hair all pink, so I kind of added like my touch, even though the character itself wasn't necessarily, the original inspiration wasn't funny. But and they loved it. She loved it. Like, she loved it. So I'd always kind of, because there's so many vast things you can do with research and inspiration, that I started to think of, okay, like what is like this really glamorous Italian editor gonna really respond to? And then I'm also, it's like, I'm still choosing it, so I'm still really happy with my own research and inspiration, and I'm still really into it, instead of having to, like, because if she had just assigned me something, I would have been miserable. So it's really good to kind of start playing, start to look into someone else's background and someone else's voice and say, okay, what would also inspire me that's gonna really inspire them? So that's kind of one of the first places I start with the magazine editors. So not only are they expecting, like we spoke about, their shooting credits is like the backbone. It's like the backbone of the entire thing. And it's crazy, because you're sitting there and you're requesting these clothes, and the credits, the actual advertising companies, don't even realize that it's like, they don't even know that they're advertisers sometimes. And I'm like, you don't get it. I was like, I'm on the phone with whoever it is, even Nike or The Gap. They're like, oh, we can't send anything. I'm like, but you advertise in the magazine, you pay a lot of money to advertise, and I want to shoot your stuff and it fits inside my story, like, please give me clothes. And kind of just having to drive it home. And sometimes I say to them, like, look, you guys did 5 pages of advertising in this issue, like, I'd really love to include you. And it changes their story really quick. Because it's the whole business conversation. It's a lot like the conversation when we go in and we're being super creative and we're doing the portfolios and all that kind of stuff. You know, we're showing our portfolios to new clients, and they don't expect us to speak business. And the minute we start talking to the PRs and the magazine editors about the business side of what we do, the respect goes through the roof, and they trust you so much more. Like, your competitive advantage is beyond. Like, my relationship with Katie Grand is so strong because I always shoot amazing credits, like the hard ones. You know, the ones that it's like, it's hard to get, and it's hard to shoot, and all that, you know? And I do, and he's like, I do it for covers. So that's like, that alone has had our relationship because I'm taking care of her and doing that, and I'm taking care of her business and her livelihood. So it's about that kind of back and forth with everybody on the shoot, but especially on editorials, it's about taking care of the magazine editor. Okay, let's see here. And magazine editors, from what I can tell, they're looking for the well-developed storytelling skills, which we spoke about a lot this morning. They want to know that you can consistently create a certain amount of images. In the beginning, you start out with the portraits, but it's really good when you're testing to go ahead and do stories. Make sure you do at least 6 pages or more, because it shows them that you can create over and over and over again. Like, inside of the same story, like beautiful images that each have their own, does that make sense? Their own look. But, you know, it's like beauty shots and 3/4 and full length, and making sure you can really run the gamut and not just do the same picture over and over and over again for 10 pages. So I know that's really important when magazine editors are looking at our books and making decisions about who they want to work with. They also really care about our relationships with photographers. Magazine editors have their own relationships with photographers a lot because they shoot with them themselves. So that's why taking care of the photographer is so important too, because they talk. Like, it's all your reputation, it's all your identity. So you know, in taking care of the photographer not only will turn around and get you commercial jobs, but they're also going to go back to the editor and tell them what they thought. And your identity is, again, like, on the line. So magazine editor, you know, sometimes they have contracts with, like, that's the other thing that's kind of cracking me up right now with the business. It's like the stylist contracts are going out the door, the photography contracts are staying. So you start to become a little bit, you know, I don't know what's going to happen with magazines in the next 5 to 10 years. I think they're going to change drastically in format, but the photographers are usually pretty consistent with certain magazines. They shoot over and over and over again with the same people. So the other thing magazine editors really care about is staying on budget. And, and sometimes that just means a shipping budget. Like, almost no, most of the shoots I do now have 0 budget. And if I'm lucky, my assistants will get covered, like, if I'm lucky. So,
What do you mean by no budget?
Like,
Editorial don't pay, what is it exactly?
some of them is 0. Like, I'm paying my own cars, I'm paying, like, I mean, they pay for this, like, the photographer will get a small budget to pay for studio and catering, and that's about it. And their equipment, and I don't get anything covered. Like, Vogue pays me a really, like, Vogue's, this is like any Condé Nast, I think they pay like $150 a day, and your assistant gets something like that, and you can expense your car, like not like a Shishi car service, but like a taxi or like a Delancey or something like a smaller car service. That's it. Like, there's no, and then they have like internal messenger services and stuff. But some of the more European magazines, I mean, 0, like nothing. Like, you're lucky if you're, like, I even pay for shipping on some, like shipping back. It's crazy, you know. But I mean, I started, you know, once I started realizing it was marketing. And I was like, okay, I'm willing to pay that. It's a lot cheaper than advertising in those magazines. You know, and that's why I also became really picky about who, I mean, when I worked for the Italian magazine, we had a little bit of a budget. I didn't get paid, but at least my expenses were covered. So usually with the smaller ones, there's nothing. And then once you kind of hit the middle commercial areas, like if you're doing like a Glamour or something like that, they have little budgets. But it's nothing like huge. It's just to cover your assistants and like basic wardrobe. Like if you need to buy like basic wardrobe stuff, like, you know, underwear, undergarments, that kind of thing. Like super, like a couple $100, really small. So like saying that, shipping budgets, I mean, all that kind of stuff that we have to manage, that like when I got into being a stylist, I was like, I didn't really even think that was the kind of thing I'd have to handle. But like those shipping budgets, and I had one assistant 2 years ago who overnighted 20 boxes by WorldNet from New York to LA. It ended up costing my client $5,000. And I was just like, seriously? Like, seriously? I can't even fathom doing that. And of course, she, poor thing, got fired. But I just, people like don't pay attention. Like, they pretend like their clients or the magazine's money is like, you can just throw it in the air. And it's like, no. They care. They care a lot. And you don't do these things to just be extravagant. It's like, she could have UPS'd it. Where's that coming from? Is that me? What did I do?
It's gone.
Okay, good. She could have UPS'd it and sent it 4-day, and it would have cost $500. So it's the small things like that, and like being responsible for your team and your process. That's why the processes are so important, because it helps you stay on budget. The other thing that magazines really depend on us for, other than credits and staying on budget, is to do what we say we're going to do. And that's been a big thing that I've noticed happens, a big breakdown. And it's a big breakdown that I've heard expressed to me from a lot of my editor friends and from Katie and other people, is that stylists will say, oh, yeah, I'm totally, yeah, that idea sounds great, blah, blah, blah. And then the day of the shoot, they completely change the whole creative direction. And the editors get the images and they're like, they can the whole thing. Because it's nothing, because they're curating an entire magazine. And every story brings a certain element that they depend on. So the minute the entire inspiration changes, their whole magazine changes. The inspiration for one shoot changes and one shoot completes, the whole magazine changes. So for them, it's so important that stylists clearly communicate what we want to do. That's why the inspiration and the research is so important, because you can really show them, like, this is what I do. When I did a couple run-throughs with Anna, and I had everything. I was like, here's the pictures of the person I'm doing, here, and I had the rack, we went through the rack of clothes, I was like, this is the kind of hair I want to do, and I had 5 pictures. It's like, this is the kind of makeup I want to do, I had 5 pictures, here's the location we're going to shoot in, here's the vibe of the shoot that the photographer and I talked about doing. I had to run through, and she was like, okay, great. But she had to see, I had to like totally spell out the entire story for her so she could, trust me to go and do it. So it's really, really important that once you do that with an editor, that you actually give them images somewhere. I mean, not that, because things happen, right? Like you get on a shoot and it's just not working. And you're like, oh my God, this great idea that I thought was so awesome looks totally crap. I think we've all been there, right? Where it's like, oh my God, I had this great idea, and then you're like, not a good idea anymore. And, and it's like having open communication. So, when that happens, I call my editor. And I take pictures, like that's why smartphones with little cameras are so important, because it's like the new Polaroid, It's like, I take a picture of the screen, I send it to her, like, this is what we're doing, okay? Is that good? Is that cool? And then as long as they're a part of the process, they're usually okay with it. Like, they'll figure it out, because, not every idea is gonna work. But staying in communication with them, because they can also have good ideas to help you, they're there as a collaborator for you, too. So if you get stuck on a shoot and you're like, oh my God, I can't make A, B, and C work, they might be able to suggest something, or they're like, okay, you know what? I'm glad you called me. Just do what you think looks good. And I've been in those conversations too. So it's just really important to stay in communication with the magazine editors. And then of course deliver. This one's like a no-brainer, but to deliver the inspirational, or like deliver pictures that you love. You're not always gonna love every single shoot. I do usually with editorial, because it's like I put my heart and soul, like research, and really go for it. But delivering them pictures that you're really happy with too. And I've had those shoots too where I was like, that was the worst shoot of my life, and I can't believe I made it through the day. And when the editor like calls me or texts me and says, how's it going? And I'm like, and I'm honest with them. And that's like, I'll be interested to see what you think when you see it. Because I don't necessarily say it's bad, because I was recently shooting some celebrities with a photographer who shoots really fast, and so the whole thing just like went, and I was doing the best I could, and they ended up, I saw the pictures a couple days ago, they look great, but I was just having one of those moments in the shoot where I was like, I'm holding the voice and I'm doing what I know I've committed to do, and it, and it's just something, I'm just not sure if this is what she wanted, from my editor. And she was like, well, you know, how did it go? And I was like, I'll be interested to see what you think. And then she was like, okay, great. And it keeps it neutral, not like, oh my God, it was the worst shoot of my life. Like, it's really important to kind of keep the, and I don't even like to say when someone says, oh, how's it going? Like, oh, it's good, it's great. I don't, because that's like, then it's like if they hate it, then like, oh, Sally we don't like the same things, so I'm never gonna work with Sally again. I've been in that situation too. Like, it's like being a yes person. And I'm more about like, I'll send pictures instead of like describing the situation, because it's just so much better, because then your editor can see what you're doing, and then it's open to their interpretation of whether it's good or not. So, the other thing is too that stylists are representing the magazine on the shoots. And so I watch stylists a couple times lose sight of that, and you become the company representative. So how you act is like you're representing that magazine. It's like when I was working with Vogue, it's like I had to be Vogue when I walked in. I couldn't be a mess. You know, it's like I had to be Vogue. And because it also gets back to them, it's their reputational line. Like I become the stylist becomes a representative of the magazine. And it's really, really important for stylists to hold that while they're there, I think.